Our presenter, Cynthia BrianKate, has direct life experience in what it's like to be a transgender woman, intersex, a chimera, and what it's like to be on both the bisexual and asexual spectrums. She has been an educator, advocate, and activist on gender and sexuality diversity for over 20 years. She has been a Green for over a decade, has served and continues to serve as a vice chair of Green Party of Suffolk. She is also a member of the United States National Green Party Women's Caucus, Lavender Caucus, and the forming Disability Caucus. Cynthia helped found the Long Island Transgender Day of Remembrance and is a board member of both Intersex Campaign for Equality and Intersex Friends and Families. She has spoken on and helped organize over 1,000 panels, workshops, lectures, rallies, marches, and protests. Most recently, she has spoken at the United Nations sponsored Women Included project, the U.S. Green Party annual national meeting, and organized and spoke on the Green Party U.S. Transgender Day of Remembrance webinar. Cynthia, thank you for being here this evening, and the floor is yours.
Hello, hope that y'all can still see me. I never know how to point the iPhone. I'm actually on the Forming Disability Caucus because I happen to be legally blind, so excuse my total lack of understandable eye contact with any of y'all.
You're looking good.
Thanks, because it's always, which way am I pointing?
Yeah.
But yeah, okay. I met Cassandra and a couple other of y'all back in, I think it was July, on a workshop that y'all were doing about minority communities. And I asked, well, what about LGBTQIA? Sorry, the letters are shuffled around from group to group. And that's how we got me here tonight. Perhaps I should start with even what the heck that acronym is. It's a long and unpronounceable acronym. I have a talking iPhone and an iPad that make the words sound like some kind of alien language. You know, because instead, sometimes it'll spell it out, and sometimes it'll be like Libdika or Libtia, yeah. Okay, now that we've called the alien fleet in, okay, so lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, and asexual. Okay, I assume that by now people have heard lesbian, gay. Do we need that explained, or I can? Basically, the definition has been expanded on each of those even. Lesbian can be any people who know themselves to be women who are attracted to women. Likewise, gay is usually men, though there are lesbians who prefer the term gay woman. And gay usually is used to refer to people who know themselves to be men who are attracted to men for romantic, sexual, and relationship purposes. Bisexual, well, the term originally had to do with being attracted to men and or women, but you have enough people who say, but there's all these other gender options. Don't I get to date these people too? So it's been expanded to include words like omnisexual, made popular by the British sci-fi show Torchwood, pansexual, bi-expansive. There's a whole bunch of terms. And rather than take the whole night to go through every single one there is, because I'd have to sit down at my Mac to get those, I'll just go over a basic overview and such, and how that has anything to do with my life. Transgender, the current definition that I've seen and encountered, an umbrella term that pretty much includes anyone whose gender identity and or expression differs from what they were expected to be when they were born, assigned gender and or / assigned sex. See, people conflate sex and gender. Sex is used to refer to biology, whether you're male, female, or intersex. Gender is actually more society's way of categorizing people's behaviors, activities, interests, mannerisms, all that stuff, what you wear, what you do with hair, facial hair, makeup, clothing, jewelry, all of that. And basically, when you're born, the doctor usually looks between your legs, makes a very binary distinction, regardless of what I'm about to say, is that not everybody is only male or only female. Intersex is the currently accepted word to refer to people who are biologically in between what's considered male and female, whether by chromosomes, hormones, genitalia, or any of the other characteristics that are associated with physical sex. This is different from transgender. You can be biologically intersex and also trans-identified like I am. In fact, a couple friends in the Suffolk chapter have asked me, but if you're intersex, how can you be trans? Simple. I have a loving, well-meaning, and somewhat clueless family who thought I was a boy, raised me as a boy. I grew up to know myself as a woman instead, and that's a subset of transgender. There are so many identities and categories that fall under trans. And there are two terms, trans and cis, for gender. They come from chemistry. Cis means same as, trans means to do with having gone across, different from. If your gender identity, your sense of yourself as a man, a woman, or someone else matches what they assumed you were when you were born, that's cis. If the answer is anything otherwise, you're somewhere on the trans spectrum. Asexual spectrum, that refers to people who do not experience sexual attraction, desire in the ways that our society expects us to. And it is a spectrum. It ranges from people who are completely asexual, who have no sexual attraction to other people, to people who fall under what's called demisexual, which is where you're only sexually attracted to people you're romantically interested and emotionally connected with. There are a whole bunch of others, so I'll keep it simple in this, or as simple as it can be. For asexual, it's a gray area. People are sometimes sexually attracted, sometimes not at all, depending on situation, person, and place and time. Lithosexual, litho comes from stone in some parts of the gender and trans communities, and lesbian communities in particular. You have stone butch and stone femme. Keeping this G-rated, or at least PG-13, I'll say that those are people who in the bedroom prefer to give than to receive. And butch and femme, those have to do with gender expression. Femme is pretty much people who express a very feminine gender presentation expression. Butch is used for people more on the masculine side. And in terms of, I said asexual spectrum, there's also a sexual and a romantic spectrum. Sorry, hair got in my face. Okay, sexual orientation is one thing. Romantic is another. There are people who are asexual and aromantic. And the slang terms in the community are ace and arrow, like the playing card and like the thing you shoot at a target. A lot of groups use those as logos. So the same way that sexuality can range from totally asexual to totally sexual, romantic orientation can range from totally aromantic to totally romantic. And you can be a romantic asexual. So that's pretty much just what the heck are any of these words? And there's a lot of words. I have to throw them at y'all so you know what any of this stuff means. And I have to throw them at myself and my friends and pretty much everyone I encounter. The one I did not say yet, chimera. Okay, the old word for intersex is hermaphrodite. It's not as popular in the community because of the way that it's been sensationalized. That comes from Greek myth. A Greek deity who was in one story born in between. Chimera also comes from Greek myth. The chimera was a mutant super beast formed by a dragon, goat, and lion mating to make a super creature. A chimera in this sense, in terms of human people, is when twins, triplets, or other fetuses merge in utero, and you wind up with a person being born with a combined body. And people think that all this stuff almost never happens. No, okay, we don't know full statistics to this day on LGBT people or even on trans. I've heard 12 different sets of statistics. On intersex, the current statistics I work with are almost 20 years old, compiled by Robin Wood, and that's nearly 10% of the population are somehow in between male and female. As for chimeras, I've been told that 1 out of every 8 pregnancies starts out as multiples and winds up with someone being born single, and that can be through miscarriage of siblings. That can be through siblings being reabsorbed into the mother, which actually kind of alters how her sex characteristics are perceived. And then the rest of the percentage of this are people born as chimeras. So I think I've gone through most of the 101, what the heck is this even? And now that I've done doing the whole Ferris Bueller's teacher hitting you with all the concepts and blah, 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 I'll say a bit about me. Okay, my preferred name, the one that I go by, and I am known to people and everyone on earth except my loving, coolest family know me by, is Cynthia BrianKate. Preferred name and legal/birth name are not always the same. That's not only for trans and intersex people. I know a couple cisgender people, one of whom hates the name her mother gave her. She will never answer that name. None of us know that name, and that's all cool. And one of the guidelines that I give people is, if someone tells you, I want to be called this name, you go by it. Same thing with pronouns. I myself do prefer she, her pronouns, but that's not true for all trans people. That's not true for all intersex people. In fact, I think that Alan could do a bit more to speak to what being genderqueer is than I can, but the transgender umbrella covers a lot of things, including people who are clearly on the binary spectrum of gender. I actually am way more on the woman's side of things than I even ever expected. But there are a lot of people who fall into non-binary. Non-binary is a pretty catch-all term that applies to just about anybody who feels that the terms man and woman do not exactly encompass their gender. You have gender non-conforming is actually an even broader term, which can apply to anyone who in any way steps outside the stereotypes. Even people who identify as cisgender. This all got conflated a bit when Avril Lavigne wore that necktie and everybody's like, oh my God, is she trans? No, but she could be called gender non-conforming, at least in that one video that y'all saw. Genderqueer, Alan can speak to better than I can, but my understanding is that, okay, the word queer is used in parts of the LGBTQIA community for people who want a more in-your-face, edgy, and to-the-point word than, say, lesbian, gay, bi, trans, or say the Lavender Caucus uses the word lavender as a catchphrase that's been used in some parts of the community. My loving parents would not know what the heck you said if you said that this person here from this group is lavender. But if you said they identify as queer, oh yeah, we know what that means. So that's the same thing with genderqueer. People who do not identify with the standard traditionally expected categories of gender, who are somewhere either in the middle or somewhere else entirely. And Alan, you are so welcome to say something to this when it's Q&A time or whenever you think it should.
Thanks.
As for me, I happen to be transgender. I do know myself as a transgender woman. I tried living as a guy for the first 18 years because people assumed I was. Well, let's see. I use a girl's name. I'm in a skirt, which is my preferred way of dressing. And I'm wearing stereotypical goth lady accessories. So, yeah. And that's not to say that there aren't guys who'd wear this stuff too, or gender non-binary, genderqueer, or non-conforming people. In my case, I went through a whole bunch of gender journeys. I lived on every part of the continuum and spectrums that I thought might fit. And after a while, I was even surprised, wait a second, I didn't really know if woman even fit at all, but it's what actually feels like my gender. So, oh well, might as well go with it. I've done tons of improv comedy. In fact, the goth and sci-fi radio show I do every Wednesday and Thursday is kind of like improv. Sometimes it's comedy. The hostess pulls a topic out of her list of stuff that we might have covered, and we go with it. And that's kind of how I feel gender works, is what you feel works for you. There's no real reason why you shouldn't explore it, except whether you feel comfortable with that. And nobody has to go at a particular speed or come out, or even ever come out if they don't feel that. I think that people are happier when they come out, but I don't think anybody should be forced to be open about themselves. And there's no right time. I first came out as being on the bisexual spectrum around 18, once I got done with high school and had actually tried dating a couple people. By the way, slightly funny thing that's not entirely off topic. My first girlfriend happens to be a goth lady named Lenore, and while I do stand-up, that's no the actual thing. She's a slightly well-known Long Island writer, and she was the first person to tell, one of the first 2 or 3 people to tell me, no, you can be who you are. You want to wear something? My aunt gave me all these dresses and makeup that I don't want. Why don't you try them? And I'm like, wow. Because bear in mind, I was told I was a guy. I was expected to be a guy. I had no idea there were other options, because I grew up in a couple small towns on Long Island in the, okay, I was born in 76. I don't look it, but yeah, born in 76. Grew up in the 80s. For me, the 80s aren't just a revival dance craze. It was my childhood. I make jokes about Ferris Bueller because I've seen it both first and second run in the theater. And in the 80s, I didn't have any role models per se that I know of. I didn't have other people to talk to. No one talked about it in my school. So that's really not a situation I recommend, but it's not a situation that happens as much anymore because people are coming out all over the place. We got even reality shows. I don't do that genre, but I watched Jazz Jennings' show for about a month, and I thought it was pretty well done. If y'all haven't seen it, it's a show called I Am Jazz, about a trans woman who came out at 4 as trans. As for me, I first came out as being anywhere on the gender spectrum around 19 when I met my first girlfriend. And that's where I came out as being someone. And back then it was just, okay, I don't know where I am on this, and I'll explore, which I kind of did for about the next, I don't know, till I was in my late 30s. As for intersex, okay, I happen to be an intersex chimera. Because as I said, chimeras are when siblings merge. If the siblings are of the same sex, then you have a chimera. If the siblings are of opposite sex or different sexes, actually, I've been told that my mom's side of the family is notorious for fraternal twins. My late uncle is my mom's twin brother. So we were all asking, okay, did it skip generations? Apparently not. Apparently, I was supposed to be triplets had we all been able to be born singly. This does happen naturally, and for generations and centuries, we've had chimeras be born in the world. But there are certain things that were done in the medical profession that increase the likelihood of this, and this may have been the case in my own family. DES was an artificial estrogen drug given to pregnant people from the 1920s or 30s to the 80s. At least that's when it was officially taken off market. It was like a snake oil thing. It'll cure everything from miscarriage to morning sickness to just feeling blah. No, instead it actually caused a lot of mutations. some of which dangerous, some of which scary, some of which just not standard. Chimerism, the thing of being chimera, has actually expanded a lot. In order that none of us would come out not alive, my siblings and I merged into one body. The arm holding this here iPhone is from a different body than the arm that's currently waving in front of your screen. It plays hell when I try to play the drums or maracas or anything that, heck, doing up zippers takes me twice as long. I have asymmetries throughout my whole body. You can see them with my clothes on, let alone with them off. I'm perfectly cool with my body, but not everybody knows what to make of me when they first meet me. And yet I didn't know any of this because nobody talked about it. At least not where I grew up, not where I was coming from. As a hardcore anime nerd, that's the first place I encountered chimeras, in a 70s Japanese anime show called Gotcha Man, where the bad guy and his sexy assistant turn out to be, nope, still a chimera, same person, different expression. I don't think that it works like that in real life, but it was an awesome show to watch as a kid. I figured out I'm intersex after I had 2 puberties. Yeah, I know, one is enough of a pain in the butt. Picture having 2. I had the one that I didn't want, that I was told I should expect at usual age. And then when I was in my 20s, I had puberty number 2. And I was told my whole life, oh, you're a boy, boys don't grow boobs. Well, I will say that this here bosom, which came in my 20s, was the answer to an entire childhood of prayers given at night. It did freak out my girlfriend at the time, not because she was uptight or a hater, but because I thought I was a guy. I was told I was a guy. And then my body starts going through pretty much a female puberty. I didn't know what to make of it. She didn't know what to make of it, but we stood by each other and we're still friends. The breakup had nothing to do with my gender. It was just, we had other stuff going on. As I said, we remain friends. I still have a lot of really awesome memories and some short stories she wrote for me. So after all this, I realized, okay, my body is not what I was expecting it to be. Then after meeting one of my cousins at a sci-fi convention, who's a distant cousin, who I hope is on this call tonight, if not, will be watching the YouTube, they're the closest I have to an opposite sex on this planet. They were told they were female. They are going through similar things the opposite way. As I said, not all chimeras are intersex, but some of us are. And through meeting this wonderful, kind, amazing freaking person who I hope is seeing this tonight, I finally realized, okay, this is why everything's asymmetrical. This is why my upper right and lower left parts of my body match more than, say, upper left and upper right. This is why the arms don't match up. This is why everything that's under the clothes is like everything that's under the clothes. I did say I wanted to keep this kind of at least PG-13, unless people ask me more in-depth questions, which I'll choose whether or not to answer. As for, let's see, bisexual spectrum, figured it out because, well, my whole life I've been interested in all sorts of interesting and cute people. I spent a childhood and Susie Sue, if y'all have heard of Susie and the Banshees. Come on, watch the movie Labyrinth. Tell me Jareth the Goblin King isn't the hottest fantasy character ever. Yeah, I know, total tangent. And yet it isn't, because people ask, how do you know that you're lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, asexual spectrum, anywhere on any of this kind of stuff, non-binary? People just know. Or you explore and figure things out. I bounced around from thinking I was a guy because I was told I should, to living on every part of the non-binary, genderqueer, and gender expansive spectrums. My background's in English. I have a degree in literature. Certain grammar words trip me up. And pronouns certainly do these days. But yes, I figured I'll see what works for me. I explored my butt off. And after a while, a dear friend of mine who's now in Florida said, wait a second, you've been out on the girl side of stuff for 15 years. This was like 2011-ish. Why aren't we throwing you a quinceanera? Because I'm not Latin. Well, you're an honorary one now. I don't know how that plays with anyone outside my circle of friends. I never claimed to be most knowledgeable on anything except my own experience and that of people I know. But didn't stop my friends from taking over the local karaoke bar, posing a place in my favorite shades of pink, and making the sheerest, shortest, pinkest dress I will probably ever wear. And yes, it threw me an actual quinceanera that night. And after then, I was like, okay, this is a womanhood ritual. I don't know if I feel that way. And after a few more years of figuring out, does this feel like me or not? Turns out it does. I don't know if I woke up one day and got hit with surprise you're a woman, or if it was just a gradual realizing, but here I am. And that's where I have a lot to still explore on that even. Asexual spectrum? Well, I never understood sex, ever. In junior high, I said, I don't get it every time a sexual joke came up, which was every single other word said in my junior high. My 9th grade yearbook has every single friend writing that as a tagline for me. I just never understood it. I at least tried seeing if sex was for me. It just didn't happen. What I got out of the last time I ever tried it was a night of 2 people apologizing that nothing happened and deciding to stay friends anyhow. And even my family can't believe I'm still a virgin because, well, I use a 44-year-old body. They make bad teen comedies about this, but some of us are cool with that. Isaac Newton actually died a virgin. Nikola Tesla is supposed to have been completely asexual from half the biographies I've read of him. And okay, the current statistics are 1% of the population is asexual, but that's people who are completely asexual. We don't know any statistics on anything else because there's been like 1, 2, maybe 3 studies that have actually done statistics. I can say that an entire generation of a friend's family are all asexual spectrum. I can say that I'm on 3 Facebook groups that number in the thousands. I can say that I'm part of a book club that's 100% asexual spectrum. We're a small club, but the point is, we all met by chance. And we didn't put out a sign saying, ace people come here for books. It was more, wow, we all are. So yeah, that's a lot of the 101 of just what is any of this and what is any of this to my life of why the heck I'm here, and you don't just have like my computer telling you all the words. In terms of some of the stuff that I've worked on, I have founded I helped found with 3 or 4 other people, Long Island Transgender Day of Remembrance. That's one of the less cuddly things. Unfortunately, there is still hatred, violence, discrimination, and murder that goes on in this world. Unfortunately, a woman like me has a chance of being killed every 3 days around the world, every 2 weeks in this country. And this violence can happen to anyone who steps out any gender stereotypes, not just trans women, not just trans men, not just non-binary, intersex, or gender non-conforming people. Cisgender people have also been killed by haters. And the point of a hate crime is not about what the person's actual status is. In fact, Roger and our friend Ian helped me with this years ago to explain it. It's about the hater's perception of their targeted person as being the minority they hate, or minorities, and wanting to send a message of fear and terror that people don't be out about it. Transgender Day of Remembrance was founded in 1999 in San Francisco after murders had happened, to bring awareness that this stuff happens and it should not happen. The Green Party has entire planks of our national platform pretty much saying, don't be hating, don't be hurting, don't be killing. I mean, the language is far better than that, but I'm dumbing it down to this for the present moment. I became an activist because I was nearly murdered by haters in my hometown 21 years ago this August. Made me an activist, made me a spiritual person if I wasn't already. I don't recommend people get their start in spirituality or activism that way, but I use my experiences to be able to talk about this to people. I mean, at least people are being more aware on stuff like this. At least people are making this less acceptable to be hating or hurting or killing people. At least people are being out and open about their lives. And people are coming out younger and younger and younger. People's understanding is evolving younger and younger. I've met at least half a dozen transgender children, gender non-conforming children. One of my friends in Michigan, well, my friend's kid was in a junior high class. One of the classmates said, "Oh, there's only men and there's only women. You're just whatever you're born with, and that's it." To which my friend's kid, I'm so proud of this, years and years later, said, "Nuh-uh, not everyone is. I know Miss Cynthia, and she's both." I helped run the kids programming for a sci-fi convention in Michigan for 5 years in the town of Romulus. So for all us Trekkies, live long and prosper. All the townspeople are Romulan. Point is, the kids would ask, "So are you a boy or a girl then?" Physically, I'm both. It happens. Hey, that's cool. And since this was back when Potter was still a cool thing, and there hadn't been some of the issues with the writer of the series on diversity stuff, they'd ask me, "That's cool that you're both, but oh my God, is Harry going to get murdered in the next book?" To which I'd tell them, "I don't know. That's why we read books. I have a degree in literature. My life's biggest ambition is to show people why books are awesome. And if they don't like a book, or if they think that the book was written badly, or that the story really is hatefully written or poorly handled, then you put that book aside and pick up another." And I feel with people, if you don't understand somebody, then you at least ask them, "Can you tell me a bit about yourself?" Okay, I do not recommend going up to somebody and ask, "So what's under your clothes? What's in your shorts?" You wouldn't ask that of a cis person. You shouldn't ask that of a trans, intersex, non-binary person. But you can definitely ask, "What would you like me to call you?" Again, preferred name, pronouns, identifiers. That is in the platform of the National Green Party, including that we would like the paperwork in this country to be revised. Have options for non-binary, options for intersex, options for genderqueer, gender fluid, which I always wish I could do a better job on. What I understand is that are people who go pretty much explore their gender all the time, switch up their presentation as they feel like it, and that does confuse people. And some people are cool with that. I myself confuse people. I live as a woman. I used the name Cynthia, which last I checked in Western culture, particularly British and American, is a girl's name given to baby girls in the old last 100 years or so, still sometimes. I wear dresses. I wear makeup, those I need help getting put on. I decided I would rather be on this presentation than spend an hour and a half as a legally blind person doing my own darn makeup. Point is, with all that, I still have to point out to people, no, I'm actually a girl when they call me a guy. And it's not always that people are trying to be haters. It's usually that people just don't know. Before the whole pandemic thing, I was playing Dungeons and Dragons in a live in-person group in a game shop. And this one well-meaning young guy just kept calling me he, even though my name's Cynthia and I'm playing as a dwarf named Ardelia. And this is the way I handled it. The lady dwarf will use her magic to heal anybody who respects she's a girl, and will share the meat that she cooked from the monster y'all killed to everyone that calls her a lady. Sometimes I got to do this. I'd rather do that than get in an argument. I like being silly if it is appropriate. I don't believe in being silly if it's like a life or death thing, if it's like, say, I mean, I've seen performance used at Transgender Day of Remembrance events, but there you really have to be sure to be respectful to both the dead and living of the communities. But if it's just something where it's just doing a 101, I could bore y'all to death with, well, these are the terms, these are the labels. Or I can tell y'all what it's like to be a Dungeons and Dragons nerd who sometimes has to correct people on her character's pronouns, let alone her own. I can tell y'all what it's like to be at sci-fi conventions where the kids are running around trying to be all these fantasy things, and their only worry is what happens in the next book. And that is one of the biggest pieces of hope I have for this planet and people on it, is that people are getting less worried about what you consider yourselves. My first set of questions was, what's a man? What's a woman? Can you explain it without falling back on body parts and who wears lipstick and who's got a beard and who's got dresses and pants? My second question is, why are people so worried about this that they're going to hurt themselves or worse each other? If I get the answer to that question, I'll worry a bit more about the first. Let me know how I'm doing on time.
It's
My
8:17 now,
I mean, I
would
can
you
go
want to go to 8:30? Yeah,
Do people
okay.
have questions? Because I can go to questions. I love questions. My worst thing is when people sit there, she presented, what do we say now? Ask me a question. I am not going to mind if you ask a question. I may not answer the question, or I may answer the question. I sometimes tell people the downside is I'll answer any question you ask me, but I'll answer a question. And I've been dubbed the mayoress of TMI, Too Much Information City, sometimes. At my quinceanera, I had one of those beauty pageant lady sashes that says it. It's actually in the closet over there with some of my ball gowns. So any of y'all got questions?
How do you think the Green Party does on these issues? Do you think we're doing a good job in getting this across, or no?
Well, this is the thing. We are a wonderful party that has a wonderful platform, set of 4 pillars and set of 10 key values. And the platform does include all of this. We have a Lavender LGBTQIA plus caucus. And there are a lot of good people, but there is a lot more work to do. Some people just have never heard of this. There are some people who probably aren't cool with this. But the main thing that I see in the party is simply a need to know that people feel they haven't heard of this. I mean, I can work with that. I can always work with, well, we ain't heard of this, so what is it? Okay, I'm an English graduate, but I still hear that word used in daily parlance all the time. So yes, I can live with, we haven't heard of this. Can you explain this? I don't think that's what every LGBTQIA or otherwise person feels up to doing, but I am up to doing it. I think that there is a lot more work to do, and it's not always going to be easy, but I think we got it in us as Greens to do it. And I'm very proud that the platform of the U.S. Green Party does affirm my womanhood. It says trans women are women. It says trans men are men. It says everybody, every other gender, it gets to be recognized as whichever other gender we are. There have been policy statements put out by the National Women's Caucus. It's kind of why I'm wearing proudly the shirt from NWC tonight. I'll say that we put on the one of the bigger and better Transgender Day of Remembrance webinars I have ever been on. If you go to the National Party site, you can find the link. I think Roger put it up on the Suffolk chapter a couple days after the final edits were done on some of the tech issues we were working on. Trust me, every webinar I've ever been on has had a tech issue. This one probably does too.
Of course.
If not y'all, I probably did one myself.
Tanya has a question.
Oh, thank you, Cynthia. I wanted to thank you for a very informative meeting tonight. And I agree with you. I think so much more has to be done. And I think the Green Party should be on the front line with this, the entire discussion, because so many people want to stop the discussion now. I have heard many people, making very, very derogatory comments about the new terms and the pronouns, and the backlash has been very strong. I think that the Green Party could really be way out in front on this discussion. I go back to the 70s when I remember we first started to talk a lot about, more openly about sex and abortion and relationships. And when the book came out, Everything You Wanted to Know About Sex But Were Afraid to Ask, everyone ran out and bought that book. And it was translated, I think, immediately into 56 languages around the world.
Wow.
People were buying that book. I mean, everybody ran and got the book. And here we are 50 years later. So we haven't really discussed that much more in the last 50 years, except LGBTQ, And I think this conversation that you're talking about, Cynthia, is so important. And I really think that our Green Party could be on the forefront with this. We would reach a lot of people, and just the way the leaders were on the forefront with gay marriage, We remember the opposition to that when we first talked about it. And look at now how much progress we made. So I don't
Party's working on it.
To talk about it, but I thank you very much for bringing this whole topic to us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. And the party is working on this, and there are some struggles, there are some issues. I will not say this party is perfect, but we have some good guidelines. We have actual rules. We have an actual platform that pretty much says that we're all to agree on respecting people. And I will say, okay, on marriage, the Green Party has been on the forefront of marriage equality, though, okay, first of all, Roger can tell me the name of who the heck this is.
Unmute Roger.
Mayor Newport, who's a Green, I believe was arrested by Elliot Spitzer's people because he's also I think a Unitarian minister who performed one of the first same-sex weddings in New York State back when this was still a battleground. On marriage equality, LGBTQIA people generally have won these rights. Polyamorous people have not necessarily. Okay, monoamorous, polyamorous. Monoamorous is that, you're with one other person, you're a couple. Polyamorous is many loves, capable of loving, being attracted to, in relationships with more than one person. I myself am polyamorous. Yeah, I know it confuses people. Wait a second, she's polyamorous, she's bisexual, and she's asexual. Well, yes, because I'm asexual, but I'm bi and polyromantic, which means that I don't do sex with people in the physical sense, but I'm romantically attracted to them, and that can be of various genders, of whatever they are, that I like in a person, and I can be attracted to more than one person at a time. And on the marriage equality stuff, so polyamorous people still are only expected to be able to marry one person in this country. And people with disabilities, if you're on things like SSI or other disability benefits, if you marry somebody, there is the question as to whether you may lose parts of your benefits, which is another struggle on marriage equality. I would like to see, especially now that we're forming the Disability Caucus, I'd like to see our party be as in front on that as on everything else. On intersex, I'll say our party's completely in front. Okay, sadly, we still have in this country and in parts of the world what's called IGM, intersex genital mutilation, where doctors and other medical professionals will interfere in a young person, child, baby's life and surgically alter the genitalia, which harms reproductive function and robs them of bodily autonomy and decision-making power over their own body. just to make the body fit arbitrary standards of they're all male or they're all female, which all bodies are not. The Green Party is the first political party I know of that said intersex people have the right to our own bodies, and we support fully informed consent in all medical decisions. When she ran for president in 2012 and 2016, Jill Stein derailed a couple of her own campaign events to do speeches as a medical doctor who's pro-intersex on why this should be better understood and doctors should be more sensitive. I'm geeked as hell and proud that the Green Party is at least trying to be on front on all this, but I do admit there's a lot more work and I want to help with it.
I have a
Thank you.
question as since your background is in literature, can you recommend some books that do a really good job of encapsulating the different marginalized experiences?
I've actually lost track of how many books have how many characters in them. You may laugh that my favorite novel of all time just maybe one from the 60s. If anyone's heard of The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula Le
Oh,
Guin.
yeah.
That
Love
one,
book.
yeah, because, okay, it's not the same as Earth culture, but the planet Gethin, everyone on there is somehow intersex. But unlike Earth, they don't know what genitalia they're getting for the 3 days a month they get them. So they don't have all the stereotypes. And the guy from Earth, an Earth man, is on their planet trying to get them to join the Ecumen Foundation. And you have a very cisgender Earth man having to work with the Gethenian local mayor, and they have to overcome their own misgivings on each other's gender and overcome a literal Cold War on a frozen planet. Clive Barker did a pretty good job with some of this in the novel Imajica, Imajica. Let's see, I can recommend some of Rick Riordan's books even, because not the Percy Jackson, what's the one that has all the Norse characters? You know how in Percy Jackson they're all like half human kids of the gods? He did a Norse series where one's, I believe, a descendant of Loki and Hela who's non-binary. There's so many shows. I recommend the TV show Sense8 if y'all are on Netflix. It's a sci-fi show where everybody in the main cast is empathically connected. Nomi is a young trans woman played by, oddly enough, Supergirl. Have any of y'all watched the show? There's a young trans woman. I can't remember the character or actress name because I don't watch it as often as that woman. But also a young trans woman played by a young trans woman who went from being just a dork cover reporter at Supergirl's TV network to now being a time-traveling superheroine. I mean, there are so many books I'm losing track, and that's great because when I was growing up, I scoured my library. I found maybe 1, 2 books. Last time I was in Barnes & Noble, I literally tripped over a whole section.
I wanted to ask a question about the National Green Party's issues. Are you familiar with the Georgia Green Party? And
No,
Yeah,
don't go there.
unfortunately,
don't go there.
Don't go there.
that is its own mess, and I do not really think that anything that could be said about it would really make anybody either very happy or even be actually easy to describe. But this is the thing. I'm not sure I should even go into it, not because it's not something that should be discussed, but that particular matter is currently the subject of action in this party. There are current proceedings going on in upper levels of the national party to decide what to do about that particular mess. If you ask
I'm a
me
national
about
delegate.
Phrase, I can ask that. I cannot answer anything specific about Georgia
Okay.
A because I don't know it, and B, I wouldn't want to intrude on it. But if you're
Just
asking,
full disclosure,
about
I'm a national
LGBT
delegate. So what I was
trans
going to say
people,
is that there hasn't actually been a proposal to really do anything to Georgia on the matter, except there's been discussion, but there hasn't actually been a proposal. And I was curious if you thought that there should be a proposal for anything to in response to what Georgia did?
Well, I can definitely say that the actions that have come out, which are sadly public, which have been brought up everywhere in the party, that I can speak to. The Georgia Green Party leader adoption of outside groups' anti-transgender statements and platforms, that is unacceptable. It violates the platform. The platform says trans women are women, trans men are men, non-binary people are not to be judged by binary standards. Intersex people are to be given the full respect of their bodies. And anything that says otherwise is actually flying in the face of decades of work this Green Party has done. I think it's sad that there should even be people calling my womanhood into question. I'm glad that this is not the case in most of the party. I'm glad the majority of people in this party are good. I'm sad there is a small vocal minority that is trying to redefine womanhood, redefine gender, redefine humanity and personhood. And that should not be. I think that there definitely should be something done that this be redressed. Because as a trans woman, that hurts my life. And by saying that anyone who's trying to demand that trans women be stripped of our womanhood, that's what haters are all about. When a trans woman is murdered, the killer almost always says, it wasn't a woman. We can't do that.
I hear you.
This was all said on the Trans Day, remember, in the opening, what do you call the opening introduction statement, RMC Chanel Pittman said that there are people even in our party who feel that women like those on the panel should not be treated with respect, and that's unacceptable. So the whole thing is sad. It's been painful, and groups and people that put out that kind of bigotry send a message of fear and pain to everyone else. That should not be. People should be free and safe to explore their gender. Our party is built on principles, including the pillar of social and economic justice, including the pillar of nonviolence, including the values of respect for diversity and feminism. We need to uphold those, and we need to call people out when they break with this. We need to call people to account. I'm not an expert in legal policy. I'm not an expert in the procedures. I've been a vice chair, as Roger can tell you, of the Suffolk local for, what's it been, since 2012. But I don't claim to be an expert even there. Luckily, much like any Dungeons and Dragons Explorer party, we're a cooperative group. My friends and family ask me, your D&D thing, so who won tonight? The party survived. We beat the monster. We got the gold. Everyone survived. We all won. And luckily, the Suffolk Green Party in particular, because that's my home, we all cooperate as more than anyone ever would expect us to, even more than I expected to. So if I don't know something, I can go to Roger or Marissa or Harry or Wendy or anybody and say, guys, I don't know what this means. So I don't know what the exact procedure should be done when a state party breaks with the platform values and pillars or tries legislating their selective interpretation of womanhood. But I do believe that they should be told, no, you don't get to do this. I hope that answers.
Well, I just wanted to make one point, and we don't have to push any further or not. It's up to you. There was a party, State Party Alaska, who did push against what's on the platform, and they were just voted through a proposal, proposition to be disaccredited from the national party. So that was the state of Alaska. They're no longer accredited.
Well, that wasn't over gender stuff. That was actually,
No.
I've been told, was over not endorsing the presidential nominee, which is completely different from what tonight's about.
If I may, it's also against grassroots parties, because if the entire grassroots of the Green Party voted to have Howie Hawkins as their president, then that's part of our platform. That's democracy, which the Greens stand for. And one person went against all of the people who voted for Hawkins and put Jesse Ventura, who wasn't even running, as their president. It's not. I know it's not LGBTQ, but it is against the platform.
But
So
setting the precedent that if a state party is going to just go off on their own and ignore what the other 49 states have agreed is our national platform and our principles and values, that this is the sort of consequence that we say, well, then you don't count anymore as part of the Green Party and you don't get to vote anymore until you come on board and join the rest of the group. And I think that's a perfectly reasonable thing to say, that, like, you know, it's like if Georgia decided that, oh, that Federal Voting Rights Act, we're just going to not follow that one because we don't like it. You can't do that. You know, there's consequences for that. There's, you know, they'll send in act or whatever it is.
And I didn't mean to step on you. It's more that just things have gotten really tangled with stuff at the national level. I am an alternate delegate via the National Women's Caucus.
yeah,
It's just the whole thing with Alaska was, as was said, was mainly over the presidential candidate nominee. But yes, I do agree that when a state party is going on its own and trying to break with everything else in the party, due to something like that, there should be consequences. In Georgia's case, from what I understand, I don't live in Georgia. I'm sure I have friends somewhere who do, but to endorse an outside group statements that someone just say, oh, the whole rest of the party says that trans women are women. We don't say so. That is not acceptable. The platform included trans women anywhere from 5 to 15 to 20 years ago, depending on whom you ask.
thank you.
And it's not so much a question as a point that someone brought to my attention, that basically the first day that Joe Biden became president, the White House contact form was changed so that now you can specify titles there, like, you know, Mr., Mrs., Doctor, whatever. There's an other, and you can fill in the blank for whatever you want. And there was something. There's a field for what pronouns do you prefer.
So my friend Anunnaki can contact the White House if they ever want to, and put, I think the pronouns pronounced Migs rather than Mr. or Ms.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
I think it's spelled like MX, and I've asked how it's pronounced.
Anunnaki, right?
Yeah. I do a lot of intersex community work, and I've known Anunnaki for years. And if you're on their Facebook, it will say Migs Anunnaki Ray. I admit a lot of the pronouns are not easy to pronounce if you haven't heard them, especially if you've just seen them on text. And the funny thing is, for years, most of them all sounded like they, instead of him or her or his or hers, it'd be here. People say, oh, but those are new words. Actually, that isn't. In Geoffrey Chaucer's The Canterbury Tales, the partner may be intersex. There's a debate on that in literary circles to this day. The pronoun is HIR, but since it's in Middle English, it's HIRE in the original.
Mm-hmm.
Middle English is a little confusing. I took a course in it. I sort of remember it. But that's the point, that these pronouns and this stuff go back for decades and centuries and thousands of years. If you want to read medieval Norse history and myth, the Njal saga, Njal, there's an accent mark over the A, I think, has the lead character is a possibly intersex pacifist who chooses to die rather than help a family feud between two families. Njal may be hormonally intersex. There are enough signs of physicality in that text from like 900 or 800 something Common Era that you can read it now. So these are not new words even. I mean, the old word hermaphrodite has been around since ancient Greece. Likewise, the chimera.
Also on in the
Technology changed, but even in ancient Greece, they say there were transgender priestesses who did undergo a form of sex reassignment surgery to become the priestesses known as the Galae. So anyone who says this is all new and it just came out of nowhere, no, it's just people got more words for it.
I'm sure, Cynthia, you know about this part, but also you
Tanya's
brought
trying to
up
speak.
the Norse
wanna call on
mythology,
her?
and Loki
Tanya.
very explicitly at one point becomes a female horse.
Oh
even though
yes,
he's
the
male.
Odin Thor Sleipnir is Loki's son, who Loki gave birth to. Actually, Loki and Odin are blood siblings, who, among other things, each of them I am a practicing pagan. I'm not exclusively Norse, but it is in my wheelhouse of gods, goddesses, deities, and concepts I work with. I work with Raven Caldera, who's a Nordic tradition shaman. He's written an essay that you can find online, Ergi, E-R-G-I, the way of the third. In Norse culture, you had the male path of magic. I can't even pronounce it. The women's is something like Seder or Sid or Seed. I think it Norse, pronunciation at least. And then Ergi was the way of the third. And I've had that explained to me as you have a third gender, a third sexuality, an outcast status, and weird mystical stuff. And Loki definitely falls under that. Because, I mean, come on, Loki's way to keep a magical superhorse from building a wall that would have cost the Asgardian gods the hand of the fertility goddess Freya and the sun and moon. Well, dude, he's got a magic horse. Magic mare will stop that. Which is why he's too busy being pregnant to help celebrate the victory over the bad guy. When Thor's hammer is stolen, Thor's solution is to cross-dress as Freya. And that's actually a hilarious comedy sequence in the Norse Eddas, where the bad guy who wants to marry who he thinks is Freya is all, why are her eyes flashing red? And Loki's, oh, she's crying because she hasn't seen you in weeks. And even back then, people had a sense of humor about this, which is what I think people should take away is that, yes, there are life and death struggles. There is bad stuff, but you should be open about this. You should be willing to look at this and maybe even laugh at how weird the whole gender stereotypes are. Neil Gaiman is one of my favorite writers. He gave a presentation, Gender Sci-Fi, 6 writers, 6 different gender identities and expressions. I was wearing one of the old protest shirts, Hermaphrodites with Attitude. The beginning of the American intersex rights movement was that protest to shut down a pediatrics conference to surgically alter children on stage. I'm wearing that shirt to the sci-fi convention. Neil sees me in the shirt. He's like, you, I've been looking for you. Wow, my favorite writer of current fantasy wants to meet me. This is great. You were at my panel. How'd it go? I thought it was wonderful. And he just sighs. Thank God, I thought it was a failure. Why? Because it was confusing, messy, and went nowhere. And I told him, congratulations. That's what gender really is. We're just told it makes sense.
I think Tanya has a question.
All right.
Tanya, did you have your hand up?
Unmute her or tell her to unmute.
She's on mute. She's muted.
Excuse my allergies tonight.
Or maybe she doesn't.
Tanya, you
Why
need
don't
to
we
unmute
unmute
yourself.
one thing, please?
Okay.
Oh, when you were talking about Greece, Cynthia, I thought we need to look back at ancient Africa because the Greeks were going to Africa to study and they came back to Greece with those concepts. So the ideas that we're talking about go back way even before Greece. And I'm no Pan-African scholar, but I have heard enough that people have discussed these issues with the writings they found in ancient Egypt.
Every culture that has had people who are somewhere on these spectrums.
Absolutely.
And the varying degrees have talked about it and have words for it. Let's see, in Asia Minor, which is now, I believe, Turkey and or Cyprus, you have the stories of the deity Agdistis, a hermaphrodite deity, that word was used back then, who unfortunately was mutilated by uptight beings who didn't want them to have both sets of downstairs parts. And in that myth, the severed genitalia became the first pomegranate tree or first almond bush, which is why in some spiritual paths for third gender, intersex, transgender, non-conforming people, those plants are sacred. In African culture, what about the trickster deity Anansi, who was wonderfully portrayed by Orlando Jones until I hear he might have gotten
Yeah.
That's the one they sometimes call Anansi.
What's that?
Same entity that they sometimes called Anansi.
Yes, the African deity Anansi, sometimes called Kompe Anansi. I'm not exactly a Pan-African scholar. A dear friend of mine kind of is, but she's in Michigan and not where I can call her at the moment. But yes, Anansi is a trickster deity who shapeshifts and gender swaps. And that's why Neil Gaiman put them into the American Gods novel and the later Anansi Boys, which is, if you pronounce it Anansi Boys, on an insult word used in the old times in British slang for gay men in particular, particularly effeminate gay men. They were called Nancy Boys. So, gee, the two sons of a trickster god who swaps gender for kicks. That's why Neil wrote those books. And in both books, Anansi is called Mr. Nancy. None of this is new. Every culture has had people. And in American Gods, Neil apparently did a lot of cross-cultural notes and other things. If you get to the chapter about Siberia, when the first people migrated across the land bridge, you have, I believe, a transgender warrior who's part of the group. Neil Gaiman is one of my favorite authors because he's inclusive, because he's a good fantasy writer, and because he takes literature and mythology and all sorts of stuff and puts it in there. I will mention one of my favorite transgender writers, Caitlin R. Kiernan. I'm a goth lady. I read a lot of horror, but her stuff is like romantic, paranormal, romance horror. The Red Tree is the best lesbian horror novel ever. It is a horror novel. It's mystical and paranormal and spooky, but it centers among a tragic relationship between two creative women. The best transgender horror novel I know is Kiernan's book, The Drowning Girl, where one of the three main characters is a trans woman who's pretty badass. It centers among a love triangle between a tormented artist, a genius trans woman, and a woman who might be a ghost, a mermaid, a werewolf, a something. I mean, there are people who are of the communities who are writing stuff. There are also people who are just really good on this. Last I checked, Neil Gaiman is cisgender, but he writes trans women wonderfully. If you read the Sandman comics, in the Game of You, a trans woman named Wanda, who I think is a trans woman of color, helps save the world. I believe the full Sandman is out, both graphic novel and audio. So no, none of this is new, and people just either rediscovering stuff that people knew back then, or mainly just finding new words, finding courage to actually talk about this. The fact that we have trans kids coming out, non-conforming kids coming out, that's why the haters are so vocal and so nasty, is they're scared that the world is changing, leaving them behind. And we should leave behind any lingering hatred, bias, or stupidity on this. We should be welcoming a new age of understanding. I miss anyone?
Thanks. I had side noise and I muted myself when I could unmute. But I just there was you'd said that you had a quinceañera, and how old were you when you had it?
That's the thing. A quinceañera is usually given to
16.
15-year-old Latin girl.
15. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, no, American culture does sweet 16. In Latin, 15. Basically,
yeah.
let's see. on all the trans stuff in 1996. So in 2011, whatever the heck age that was in 2011, so someone born in 76, my math skills are junk. I can recite Poe and Lovecraft verbatim right now. I'm lucky I can do 2 and 2 and add up my grocery bills. But yes, and as
Did
I
you have a
said,
great
I'm
time?
not vaccinated. What?
Did you have a great time? Was it a lot of fun?
Oh, it was wonderful.
It sounds fun.
The karaoke was great. There was a super pink foofy drink made in my honor. And we tried to make me look like Kate Pearson from B-52, but we could not find a 3-foot-tall red wig. So we made me look like a blonde, which is why there might even be video audio somewhere of me doing a 5-person tag team karaoke on Love Shack.
Nice.
And then since I was in blonde wig, we did Sister Golden Half Surprise for all the America fans in the house.
I like America too.
Yeah.
Like in the year 3000 or no?
You're thinking the year 2525. That was Zager and Evans, but they the B-52 did have a song
Yeah.
for future generation.
That might have been it.
Yeah, the one about I want to be Dracula's daughter. I want to be the son of Frankenstein. Let's be mothers and fathers now. Yeah, that song for a future generation.
That sounds cool too.
Now that I've told you all with my terrible singing, but I'm a dancer, not a singer. But I'm always dragged up on stage for karaoke. I'm always asked to sing a cappella things in Goth We Trust, the goth and sci-fi radio show I'm part of. Every Wednesday and Thursday night on WIOX radio, you will hear me discussing goth music, fashion, culture, horror literature, science fiction, weird spiritual topics. We've had at least one well-known green who's an amateur ghost hunter on the show, who also happens to be a true crime expert. So that was like the awesome thing. Somebody from my party who is on our goth show talking about investigating famous murder houses and trying to deal with the ghosts there.
And you brought up American
party.
Gods. Yeah, I loved American Gods, and I'm really not going to watch the 3rd season because they got rid of Anansi, or they got rid of Orlando Jones.
It totally wrecks much of the story because Anansi is central to everything in the book.
I haven't read the book.
The book is wonderful.
I'm gonna read it.
I do audio since I don't see print well. I have a device that will read a printed book, but it does it in a mechanical accent. So I prefer audio read by people. I had a friend buy me one of those Audible things of the full cast, and only one of them is a famous actor outside the audio world, Ann Bobby, who was on Mad About You. But if you're into audio the way I am, it's a round table of every famous audio reader in the country just about doing a character or two.
It's cool. I'll check it out.
I mean, Neil Gaiman is just good on all this. I mean, his grasp of mythology, as I said, his grasp of literature, and his handling of sexuality and gender is pretty good. Even the heterosexual relationships are sometimes oddly explored. In American Gods, Shadow Moon has to figure out, wait a second, dude, my wife's back from the dead and still interested, what the heck?
Yeah.
It's an interesting series, though. As I agree that the first 2 seasons were great. I don't know what they're doing with the 3rd season. I'm debating, do I watch it to be able to say why I didn't like it, or do I not watch it?
You know, that's how I am with Outlander.
Oh, I love that.
I want to try her other series. Did you know that Diane Galveston has a 2nd series that's a gay series?
She does, yeah, the Lord John.
The snippets I've heard are great. I mean, it's interesting because it's pretty historically in keeping, so it's not as out in your face as we would want it to be now, but that proves that she's up on what it would be like in what's that, 1700 something?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she did her research. She's got all kinds of documentation at the back.
I got to meet the inspiration for Outlander, Fraser Hines, who played Jamie McCrimmon on Doctor Who.
Cool.
Yeah, no, Gabaldon's a hardcore Doctor Who fan, and Jamie McCrimmon's story arc, the Doctor rescues Jamie from the battle of, I always mess it up, is it Culloden, however you pronounce the battle?
Culloden.
Yeah, Culloden. I have friends who are Scottish. I'm not that I know of, so I always mess it up. But yeah, because you had a time-traveling Scotsman in a kilt, Gabaldon wanted to write that. And that's why Fraser Hines played Jamie McCrimmon. Jamie Fraser's the main dude. And Fraser Hines played, who was the older guy on the later seasons of the show? There was like an older guy who was Scottish and a clan leader.
Yeah.
His godfather?
Yeah, what's his name?
Well, that was Fraser Hines.
Oh, okay.
I got to meet him at Long Island Who. And Doctor Who figures into this because on Doctor
Murtaugh.
Yes.
Who,
Murtaugh.
and Doctor Who fits into tonight's conversation as well because I don't know if any of y'all are Whovians like I am. Doctor Who geeks. Well, until 2 years ago, the Doctor was only played by men.
Oh, right. I heard about that.
Yeah, Time Lords and Time Ladies regenerate into your next body, your next self. Well, Peter Capaldi regenerated into Jodie Whittaker.
Aren't there a bunch of Marvel characters who are being reimagined as female?
There's been some of that, Captain Marvel in particular, and DC was ahead of this back in the 80s. There's a really kinky and wonderful, not for, not, you know, only if you're age appropriate to read it, but Black Kiss got all sorts of things. Everything from power dynamics and relationships to gender to trans stuff. It's called Black Kiss. The original Sandman comics that I mentioned were put out by DC Vertigo, as well as Black Kiss. Doom Patrol. One of the hostesses of In God We Trust is Chelsea Goodwin, and an amalgam of her and author Kate Bornstein became Kate Godwin for the Doom Patrol, which is DC's answer to X-Men. And you had Coagula. The word at the time was transsexual. So Coagula is a transsexual vampire who's a hemokineticist who can manipulate blood with her. Someone who is half of a DC hero.
Thor's going to be played by Natalie Portman. I think it's going to be revealed in the next movie.
Oh yeah, because I remember they're going with the J. Michael Straczynski version. Then I take it, which Straczynski is also big on mythology and mythos and story as the essence of everything. If you watch Babylon 5 or read any of his books, when he wrote Thor for about 2 or 3 years, his idea was pretty much that Thor is not just one dude who's a god, but that he's a story, he's an archetype, and his power can go to anyone who's worthy to wield the hammer. And then they inhabit his story.
Mm-hmm.
That's wonderful.
Wasn't there a side arc?
I'm really
Was it
happy that we had this
Marvel
recorded. We
Thor?
could put it on the website.
Was that
I want to watch this over and over again.
was it Captain Marvel or Thor in one of the Marvel universes? Didn't the power wind up residing in a young teen Muslim girl from like Jersey?
I think I heard about something like that. I don't read the series, but I
I fell
remember
out of
hearing
the
about it.
I fell out of the Marvel print continuity years ago. Friends tell me about it. The movies, luckily, are get it with audio description, which is how I got all the in-jokes in Doctor Strange. That book that Stan Lee's reading, well, an astral battle's raging and raging right next to him. He's too busy reading Aldous Huxley's The Doors of Perception, which says that if you do drugs and meditate, you can get there. So he's too busy reading it to see it. The audio reader for WGBH read that into my headset, and I'm laughing my butt off. every time the person
any
sees it, it's just like,
impeachment article that has ever passed against any president ever. Well, tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern, we also
Someone's got to mute.
managers bring that
Who-
article
who-
from the House
I think
Shelley.
Shelley.
to the Senate.
what was that?
That was
I think that
interfer-
was accidental.
that was some television or radio interference from Shelley's line. Shelley, we
No
muted
problem.
you.
I thought somebody had something to tell us about, like, I don't know, something going on with our actual cover.
No. We have come about to the end of our
Okay, well, if anybody wants me, I can be found on
quick
Facebook under
questions.
Cynthia BrianKate, CynthyaBrianKate, and I can be emailed at Gmail at thesacredsideshow@gmail.com.
Great.
Thank you, folks, for having me.
Wonderful.
This has been wonderful. I hope I answered at least some of
Thank
your
you.
questions.
Yeah, thanks for
I
coming.
Yeah.
hope it didn't just become my nerd fest for y'all, because I'm a proud geek, but I hope I spent more time on what this was. I guess it all works. It's all
all-
related. Thanks for having me.
It all
Thank you.
overlaps.
We were
Yep.
delighted. And
Thank
Uh,
you, Cynthia.
I'll send the link to the presentation once it's uploaded. I'll trim off the front of it and have it start with Cassandra's intro.
Thank you very much.
Great. And Green Party of Nassau County's next meeting is February 2nd.
yeah, because of President's Day, I think.
That makes sense.
Well, thanks very much, and good night for now.
Good night.
Thank
Good night.
you. Good night, everybody.
Take it easy, everybody.
You
Peace.
bet.